Hello and welcome to Up and Out PGCMLS. We deliver award-winning programs for our community, and our LGBTQ plus team at the library is one of the best in the country. So you're in good hands today. We want to welcome Delegate Anne Kaiser, who will be joining our fabulous host, Rebecca Oxley, to talk about what's happening and what are some current issues. And we'll also have some links in our chat and also scrolling that will be links to resources, community programs, library programs, and we welcome you to engage in the conversation and to reach out to Delegate Kaiser from District 14, who has been a delegate since 2003. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. And so I'm going to let these ladies take it away, and we thank you for joining us. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm sure you know by now that you are watching the Up and Out series. So every month we talk to leaders in the queer community or people who are doing leading work in the queer community regionally or right here in Prince George's County. And today we are extremely lucky to have the time of Delegate Anne Kaiser. Her pronouns are she, her, and hers. And she is in her 5th term as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, representing the 14th District in Montgomery County. She is a member of the Health and Government Operations Committee. Raised in Rockville, Maryland, she graduated from Rockville High School. She then attended the University of Chicago, graduating with a BA in Political Science in 1990. And she then earned 2 master's degrees from the University of Michigan in 1995, a master's in public policy and a master's in educational studies. While working in the legislature, Kaiser has found a second career in teaching. She is an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland College Park, right here in Prince George's County, and is teaching a course on women in politics and another course on public leaders and active citizens. She was named by the Daily Record as one of Maryland's top 100 women in 2006. Kaiser has 4 times been named Legislator of the Year for her work in education policy. Most recently, Delegate Kaiser received the Advocate of the Year award from the Maryland School Counselor Association. Anne lives with her wife, Nancy, and their daughter, Allison Joan, AJ, in the Calverton neighborhood in Silver Spring. Delegate Kaiser, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Glad to be here today.
And I forgot to introduce myself. You can see it on the screen, though. My name is Rebecca Oxley. My pronouns are she and they. And I am the librarian 3 at the Greenbelt branch, and very thrilled to have our guest with us today. So I will dive right in because you have quite the career. So you grew up in Rockville. Tell us about your experience growing up in Montgomery County at that time.
Sure. I mean, as the kids already heard of when I graduated from college and grad school. So I'm old, probably older than some of your parents, though I feel very young. But growing up in Rockville, I had 2 older brothers. I had loving parents. And maybe in some ways, my experience is not different from a lot of people, but maybe was in some ways. I was a pretty good student. I was athletic. And I did not know by high school age that I was a lesbian. I certainly am so glad that kids today can have a different experience and realize these things a lot earlier and come into their own a lot earlier. The other thing I would add, while you said I did grow up in Rockville, but right now I live so east in Montgomery County that my Calverton neighborhood is a joint neighborhood with the Calverton part of Prince George's County. So I'm nearby for anyone who's wondering where I am.
Awesome. Glad to have you as a neighbor. So how did you get interested in politics?
In some ways, I'm not sure because it feels like forever. As a little kid, I read all about President Lincoln, President Jefferson. I had these 2 books that I feel like I read 50 to 100 times a piece and thought, boy, I want to grow up to be president one day. And it didn't occur to me. Well, first of all, I didn't understand that there was something called state government or local government. Nor did it matter to me that only men grew up to be president at that point. I thought, well, of course I can do this one day. So for whatever reason, I was just fascinated by government. The mid 70s was civil rights for women, for African Americans. And I remember thinking, I agree with this. And I often say that I became a Democrat at that time because of civil rights issues. And then sure enough, 20 plus years later, when I realized that I'm gay, it was the Democratic Party who primarily has been the supporter of LGBTQ plus issues. So, but I was for civil rights issues before they definitely necessarily impacted me. But everything that I did afterwards, when I studied history, when I went off to college to study political science, I worked for a United States congressperson. I worked for somebody else in the Maryland legislature who I ended up serving with. Everything I did confirmed for me that that going into politics was the career that I wanted to do.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that you were, so driven by your passion to basically be a good human and a good citizen. What was your early political career like?
A lot of people get involved in high school. And if any of the students watching this in middle school or high school are already involved, good for you. You're way ahead of me. I didn't even get involved really during college. It was afterwards for me. I came back home to Rockville, and it was an election year, just so happened. And my parents had received some mail from from member of our state legislature. And my father, I feel like my memory is that he tossed me this invitation and said, well, you said you always wanted to be involved. Why don't you go to this? And sure enough, I did go to that gentleman's event. A few years later, I ended up being his campaign manager. He ended up supporting me. I ran for local political office. And before I ran for a party position with the Democratic Party before I ran for the legislature. The early political career was also about getting involved in my neighborhood, getting involved in my community. Being young wasn't the problem. It's that sometimes people run for office when they really haven't demonstrated their involvement yet in the community. There's so much you need to learn about your community that I learned by getting involved with different community organizations. And I would say I did stand out as a young woman. Not too many, it's in those years in their 20s, there's a lot more young men involved than young women. So I felt like I was noticed more. And even today, I feel like among the young people get involved that it's more young men than young women. And I'm also, of course, I guess by saying that I'm excluding, I'm thinking with just the gender binary. So I do apologize. I guess that indicates how old I am sometimes. But at the time, I would just say I was more unique. So I think people noticed me, and I got involved with things, and I talked to a lot of people. Like, hey, what's your career? What have you been doing? Why have you done this? And just learned a lot from talking to other people.
I want to say that I really appreciate you bringing up that the gender binary into this, because I also, will date myself. I was born in 1980 when things were really changing for women, or had just recently changed for women in terms of being able to own your own property or have your own bank account. So I was raised going to women's rights protests when I was a child and things of that nature. So I definitely vibe with where you're coming from. But it's a great point to make that for all of our non-binary, agender, and gender queer and fluid folks who are out there watching, there's certainly a place for your voice and your perspective in the governing of our regional, state, and national legislatures. So as a Maryland state delegate, what kinds of things are you responsible for?
Well, I'm gonna ask you, Rebecca, if it's all right. There was a question that you sent me that you said if I were comfortable, and I would love to share my coming out story, because for me, it's a 3-part story, and I'm gonna say honestly, the first person I came out to was the hardest, the most painful, and the most long time, and that was me. It felt like I couldn't even say the words out loud. And I don't know why. I was very open to at that time, it was gay, lesbian, bisexual rights, maybe transgender was part of the discussion. I was supportive, I was open, I had friends, everything. But realizing that I liked women was, I think, something that in my 20s I tried to reject because I thought it wouldn't fit with a political life. And I realized very soon after that, of course, it fit with the political life and how important it was that all of us show our real, I'm not thinking of the right word, but showing our real selves is so important. And I think I was in my car looking at my rear view mirror, and I think I whispered out loud, "I'm gay." And I feel like that, for whatever reason, seemed like the hardest conversation. Telling my parents, it ended up being in the newspaper because of something that happened later. But the day I told my parents, as some people might have experienced as well, and I was a young adult, much older than the students watching, I think my mother yelled the word no for a good 20 seconds. But as I said afterwards, she told me she loved me, and she made me a tuna fish sandwich. So it was hard for her, and maybe easier for some other people's parents, because my mother, who just passed away at age 86, is from a different generation. My father had it much easier, I think. Telling people publicly was really just a year later. I was in the legislature already. And I know some people say, "Oh, you ran for office straight. What, you didn't think you could run for office gay?" And the truth is, I came to it also late in life, that it was all really condensed just right before I ran for office, pretty much. In terms of publicly, I had already reached out to my 2 openly gay colleagues. They knew about me. I was already dating Nancy, my now wife. And there was an opportunity. There was a public hearing. I would love for students to be able to get to Annapolis to watch your state legislature in office. And there was a hearing about something called the Medical Decision-Making Act. And back then, gays and lesbians could not marry the person they loved. They couldn't marry someone of the similar birth gender. But at that time, if you were a partner of someone, if you were someone's partner, you wanted to be able to make medical decisions for them.
Right.
Someone could be in the hospital, and their longtime partner of decades could be excluded by someone's family if the patient themselves was maybe not aware or awake. And it's just a very sad story. So I testified on that bill, and it's unusual. Someone else sponsored the bill, another one of my colleagues, and it's unusual for someone else to come up and to testify. And I did so, and I was just describing the bill, and I just slipped it in there for other gay Marylanders like me. And that's how I came out. And it was, I felt brave and strong all day. And then that night I was with my girlfriend, and again, my now wife, and I was crying. And she said, "How is it that you're strong for everyone else and not for me?" And I just said, it just felt like I had opened this box, and you couldn't put it back in. And I was just scared. And then the next day I was fine. I just momentarily just like, "Oh my God." And then it was fine. And because I was an elected official, it made the newspaper. Decades beforehand, it would have been on the Washington Post A section, page 1. But it was so less important or exciting, even in 2004, that I was on the Metro section B on page 4. So in some ways, that was a good thing, that it was not as big a deal. What's great about the day I came out for the hearing, the actual date was March 4th. And, just the play on words, that I marched forth for equality that day. So anyway, so that's my very long version of coming out. But I think the coming out to yourself part, I imagine others can relate to that.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Delegate Kaiser. I think it's really wonderful explanation when we tell younger people that sometimes coming out is something you do over and over again throughout your life. That's a really great example of what that can look like. I'm so glad that you had an accepting family. We certainly want to remind our young viewers out there that you are under no obligation to come out. That's okay. If you're not ready, you still belong here. And you want to make sure that you are in a safe situation before making the choice to come out to various different people. Make sure they're people that you trust. But I love your story, Delegate Kaiser, because it is just that one act of saying, like me, is so powerful. And reminds us that coming out is something that we don't just do for ourselves, we do for others, because we normalize our very existence. We legitimize our presence and our needs. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I apologize that I inadvertently almost omitted that amazing question there. I think that I had last asked about, what kinds of things you're responsible for as a Maryland State Delegate, or if you'd like to start, what does a typical day or a session look like for you?
Those are the only reason that those are hard questions to answer. The first part of what we're responsible for. If people think back to their different civics or high school government classes along the way, you don't necessarily always learn about Maryland state government, though I hope you do. But it's a lot like what you hear about in Washington, D.C. with our national government, that we have a governor here in Maryland, and we have a House of Delegates, and we have a state Senate, and we introduce legislation and we pass laws that relate only to the state of Maryland. And we listen to all people come in, not just adults. The best people who ever come in are students. I actually think the students are the best people to testify. I'll actually tell you, I find, Rebecca, that adults try to lay it on thick. And when students come in, they tell the honest story, and they just tell what's really happened, the authentic life story on whichever issue. And I always find their testimony more compelling. So we will continue, at least this next year, to still have people testifying online or through Zoom, so students can have that opportunity as well, even if they can't make it to Annapolis. We also help people in dealing with government agencies. This past year, unfortunately, a lot of people were applying for unemployment, and the state had a computer system that really stunk. Really, there's no better explanation for it. And we did a lot to try to help people and solve their problems with the agency who deals with that. And we help people with other type of issues. There's really no typical day in our session. A lot of our work is sitting there. We are in a very glamorous room for our House of Delegates, a very stately, beautiful room with ivory and 4 or 5 stories high in the room. And then we go back to these committee rooms where 20 some people serve on, and we just listen. Then this whole same group of us listen to all the same issues from people who are testifying. But so much happens as we're walking through the hallways and in our offices, and we're dealing with 20 or 30 issues in any given day. So that's always good, because I don't know about some of you, I can't do the same thing all the time. I can't just sit still. So it's we get to deal with a lot of different issues.
Wow, that is fantastic. And I really hope for our younger viewers that they take away from your response that, number one, their voices matter. And they actually might even be preferred, because y'all will just come straight with the truth and let us know the emotional impact that legislation has on young Marylanders. So I hear that Delegate Kaiser is encouraging you all to use your voices and to remember that not everything is just done during session. It happens in the corridors. It happens over coffee. It happens at all different places. So it's all a kind of advocacy. And I will tell you that when you can go to Annapolis, when COVID allows. It is beautiful in there. Librarians love to go for Maryland Legislation Day, Library Day, because it's a chance for us to talk directly with you all and also, dress up nice and enjoy a beautiful, beautiful historic building. Okay, I will stop. You did mention committee work. What committees do you serve on, and what kind of work is being accomplished there?
Well, it's an interesting question. We all only serve on one committee in this next session that starts in a few weeks. Our job's only full-time 3 months of the year, but the other 9 months, and that's why you mentioned I teach at the University of Maryland. Other people are lawyers, doctors, real estate agents. People have all different jobs. So we're just full-time in Annapolis for 3 months. But for the last 19 years, I served on the state committee, so I can speak to that a little bit more. The Ways and Means Committee dealt with education. So we dealt with education in the public schools. But I would tell you that your school board and your superintendent in Prince George's County have a greater impact, each individual school system. But we in the state legislature do impact some parts of policy related to education. We deal with elections, taxes, and then gambling is certainly an interesting issue, something I never expected to enjoy dealing with. But it's been really rewarding. But I'm trying to think of some good examples. But with elections, you may have heard from last year's election, a lot of people's concerns and people not accepting election results. And other states are making it harder for people to vote. But in the state of Maryland, we only try to make it easier. More times to vote, more places to vote, more ways to vote. And it's so important for all of you that are allowed to vote. So if you're a citizen, you can vote. That as soon as even before you turn 18, you can register to vote. So it's so important for you to do that. And we will have an election in the state of Maryland next year. So if you will be 18 by November, I don't know, I have to check, 4th or 5th. But if you will be 18 by then, you could register now, and you can even vote in the primary in June, even if you're only 17 then. As long as you're 18 by early November, you can vote in the primary and general election next year. So I hope those of you who are able to will take advantage of that.
Very exciting. I remember my first election was actually a major election, presidential election. I had just turned 18 less than a month before. So if everybody can see on the screen there, there's information about elections. It's important to do a little bit of homework beforehand so that you can understand who's representing you and what kinds of things that they will be talking about, because our local elections are as important, if not possibly more important, than our national elections. So that is really wonderful. I do want to hear about what projects that you're especially proud of in your time as a Maryland state delegate.
And thank you for that question. I'll first let people know. So if you're 18 by November 8th next year, you're able to vote. The two biggest issues that I was only part of a team on were marriage equality itself and getting rid of the death penalty in the state of Maryland. And for me, those are like core issues, core values to who I am, because there's a lot of other issues that we all care about, maybe when it comes to the environment or making healthcare more affordable or providing more transit options. But sometimes something we say amended, we change a bill. Maybe we're trying to give people this much and some people feel like it's not affordable, so we give them this much. And it's like, okay, so we still got something done and it was better than we did in the past. But for me, certain issues like marriage equality and the death penalty, it's either yes or no. And they are just so fundamental to who I am. And I believed in marriage equality long before I thought it ever would apply to me.
Oh dear, it looks like we may have lost the delegate for just a moment. So we're just going to hang on for a moment or two to see if we can get the delegate back online. But in the meantime, I would welcome you if you don't know much about the Marriage Equality Act. Very, very important landmark case in which things have gone back and forth. So we're going to show a brief video while we wait for the delegate. And I encourage you to look up more about marriage equality and how it wasn't always a thing, even though queer people have been around forever.
To our second Up and Out program. Up and Out is an ongoing series of programming dedicated to sharing resources and information pertaining to LGBTQ plus teens, as well as all other Prince George's County's teens and residents. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey. Doing well yourself?
I'm doing well as well. Thank you, Chris. We will be in conversation with the Dignity Project to discuss what resources and services they offer teens in Prince George's County. And from the Dignity Project, we have one of its co-founders and its director, Cassie Morris.
Hey, hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Erica. Thank you guys for having me on today.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Can you start off just by telling everyone what is the Dignity Project and how did it get started?
So the Dignity Project is an LGBTQ organization that was founded right here in Prince George's County. So we're an organization that focuses on uplifting the beauty of the LGBTQ community. By doing so, we focus on working with lawmakers to make sure there's law put in place that benefits the LGBTQ plus community. We also focus on serving the needs of the community. One of the things that we focus on is basic needs, make sure people have what they need, the resources. And so what started the LGBTQ Dignity Project? It's always something that
Hello, and we are back. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and your flexibility. Things do happen, but luckily we have fantastic techs here at PGCMLS who get us right back to where we need to be. And if memory serves, I believe we were talking about marriage equality and why that was something near and dear to your heart, as being something especially proud. That you're especially proud of working on, and the binary nature of an issue like that, that is either
Sure.
really yes or no. So please go ahead, Delegate.
Sure, thank you. It not only obviously that it mattered to me and my life and my chance to marry the person that I loved, but I mean, I know how many other people it mattered to as well. And so many people who had really fought long before I did for gay rights and had done so many things to pave the way and make my life easier. But was also great about marriage equality is I saw my colleagues who weren't so comfortable voting for it back in 2008, and then 4 years later, by the time we finally had a majority, they joined in. One of my colleagues said years before we passed it and said that he thought that marriage equality was a civil rights fight of our generation, and he was hoping he'd be ready when the time came. And just watching so many other people who were some of the last people within our legislature to support it, to get to that majority to pass the legislation that in some cases they were our strongest advocates. I think they always knew that it was the right thing. They were scared to. They were worried that the people who voted them in might be upset at them. But once they came out and said, "I'm voting for this," they were so strongly for it because they had known it was the right thing to do for a long time. So I really got to see it up front and center, people's evolution on the issue. And I like to think that I helped my colleagues become more comfortable, along with my other openly gay colleagues, that we were their colleagues, their friends. They started to realize that we were just like them, with one slight difference. And why shouldn't we have the rights of marriage and all the good and bad that goes with it? My wife likes to joke, why can't we be miserable like everyone else and be married? The death penalty for me, I've always thought that ultimate punishment is not good. I think we make too many mistakes. Justice in our society has clearly never been evenly distributed, and certainly not that way when it comes to race. And that's something that I've long seen. And so when somebody is poor or more likely Black or brown to have a greater likelihood of a certain sentence despite committing a similar crime as someone more privileged or someone who's white, clearly something is wrong with our system. And while it's not right to give someone 15 years in jail and someone else 18 years, and there are differences in how justice is given, at least someone didn't get the death penalty and there's no going back. And the other thing is we make mistakes, and there's so much evidence now to suggest people lying, people having a bad memory, everything else. Anyway, the death penalty in my mind is just wrong. And it's the wrong message to say you did something bad and now we're going to do something worse. So anyway, I think those are issues that students can understand, and obviously people may disagree on those issues. And then something very something I'm imagining no student would understand. But in addition to the kind of taxes we all pay when it comes to our income that we make, if you own property and if you own a house, you have to pay property taxes on them. And we've had a system here in the state of Maryland that when someone is much older and unable to pay their property taxes, sometimes they can lose their entire property and even lose the thousands and tens of thousands of dollars they've invested in their home over the years through something called tax sales. And that's as far as I'm going to say the word taxes. But what I can tell you is that I'm so proud that the legislation I've passed these last 2 or 3 years on this issue are saving people money and saving people their homes. And that's something I've been really proud of as well. Just it's a more complex issue, but I was glad that I finally learned that we had this. I wasn't glad that we had this awful thing happening in the state of Maryland, but I was glad when I finally learned about it so I could do something about it and try to fix the problem.
Well, that is amazing work, Delegate. That to hear that we are helping Marylanders to stay in their homes is really wonderful, and we thank you for all of the work that you have done for the state of Maryland and for all of its citizens, because we all benefit. And a rising tide lifts all ships. When some of us benefit or are raised up, we all are. So, and I really am just so thankful that you would work on marriage equality. And I think that for our young viewers, it's important for them to know that the fight is still not over. Can you tell us why legislation recognizing LGBTQ plus civil and human rights is still vitally important work?
We're clearly not done. And certainly for some people, when marriage equality passed, there was some sense of, we must be done. There's no more fights to be had. But there are still issues. And in Maryland, things are better off than in other states. But when it comes to ensuring that your spouse is, on your health insurance, ensuring in some states that there's, housing rights or employment discrimination. To know that there was a baker in Colorado, who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple.
Mhm.
And to think that our Supreme Court said that was a fine decision. And I'm thinking if it was gender based or race based, the country would be up in arms, and that decision never would have been made. And yet, there's still some belief that you can discriminate against gay people. It's also very true, and I'm sorry for any of the students listening who've had to experience it, but LGBTQ plus kids are more likely to be bullied in school, and that's a real problem, and that we are disproportionately the homeless youth are disproportionately LGBTQ plus, and that's based on either parental response in some cases or maybe the fear of that parental response. So and I also teach a class on women in leadership, and I've really come to learn kind of that statement. Until everyone has equal civil and human rights, none of us do. And so it's so important that we don't just fight for ourselves, but that we fight for other people as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I just do want to note for any young viewers who are watching who themselves are experiencing the issues that the delegate was describing, bullying or not having a safe place to sleep at night or consistent place to sleep at night. The library can help connect you to resources. There are more than ever, there are resources in Prince George's County that are especially looking at the needs of LGBTQ plus teenagers and kids and families. So please reach out to us so we can help you to find the resources that you need to live your best life and be successful. And, I know that Delegate Kaiser, you are a big fan of libraries. Why are libraries still vitally important to supporting not only our LGBTQ plus communities, but our community at large?
Yeah, I really thought, and thank you for that question. I really thought after more people had computers in their home and access to the internet at school, that libraries wouldn't be so vital. And then, so because I also teach, every once in a while, my wife's is like, you are so behind on your grading, get out of the house, please go grade somewhere and go to the library and get it done. And so anytime I end up at the public library myself, I realize how crowded it is and how people are still using the resources and how wonderful that is. And I have a friend who's a librarian in Montgomery County, and she alerted me to like the reading programs for kids. And so before the pandemic, to be able to bring my daughter to she's 2.5, and I'm not sure she's going to arrive before this ends today, but to find out about reading programs for little kids, and in this past year to take her to a few during the summer at like an outside library. I also think it's especially important for the LGBTQ community because the librarians can direct you to so many resources about LGBTQ plus history, biographies of people, to realize that there's a United States senator now who's an out lesbian, and more than a handful in our Congress and in just other walks of life, and how accepting it can be. And so if in your small tight community you don't feel like there's that acceptance, just to know widely there's so much of that. And so there's just so many resources where the library can help you.
Thank you so much for that inadvertent plug of PGCMLS. I do want to remind everybody that Pride is a year-round thing here in Prince George's County Memorial Library Systems. And if you'd like to find out more about queer history or resources or what you should read next, check out pgcmls.info/pride for our Pride 365. Now, Delegate, I certainly don't want to put you on the spot, but you and I share a passion in education and education reform. And I'm sure, like me, you're looking at recent news throughout the country of people challenging materials in school libraries and in other places that are, community information sources. And it just so happens that quite a bit, half or more of these materials that are being viewed as something to be censored or something to be taken away deal with LGBTQ plus concepts, topics, or simply just representation. So I guess I wanted to ask you about, what's your view of what education needs to do to stand up for the LGBTQ community, for queer kids, and rainbow families.
Well, that's an excellent question. I just remember learning about banned books when my older brother, was in high school, talking about Catcher in the Rye. I don't know, was it language in that book? Actually, I ended up never reading it, so maybe they took it off the curriculum before I got there. And let me step back. I believe there was a book years ago that was written for small kids, and it was about telling the story of these penguins, 2 male penguins who were living as partners, and they didn't, people didn't want people to know that story.
Right. And Tango makes 2.
Of course you would know that. So while today older people like me and others are learning that there's no gender binary, I think maybe 20 years ago, people understanding that there was also really not even a sexuality binary. And at some point, when you're not like everyone else, you feel like you're not normal. And I think at some point you realize, I'm normal. I'm another version of normal. We're all normal. What does that word even mean? And I think, there's some people out there that are afraid that if there's books or stories out there showing, like me and my wife, showing a loving couple together, shopping at Target, doing normal people stuff, taking, as my wife likes to say, the gay agenda. We went out to the store and we took the trash out yesterday. We're just trying to do normal things. That there's people out there who don't want us to be normalized. And they don't want that because it threatens their worldview. They don't want their kids to see that because they don't want to have their kids necessarily discover that they're gay. And there's this whole crazy thing years ago about like people what's the word, converting people to be gay. And like you'd get a toaster. I think there was a joke about getting a toaster. Someone did give me a toaster early on, but as a joke. But there's some sense that you've changed someone. It's just so ludicrous to me that so many of the fights about censorship, and not just about our community, but more broadly, that we should be free with ideas and let people discover things for themselves. And fortunately, in Maryland, I don't think we have those problems today. But it really is important that there are TV shows with gay characters. And I'll tell you, 20, 30 years ago, the gay character would be there would be like a TV show, and they'd have their gay friend, and it wouldn't be a main character, but the character would show up now and again in the storyline, and it would be the most boring person. They were so afraid to show anything else, but they were trying to show how open they were, but that character never had a personality. And then finally there was a sitcom, and even though Roseanne Barr ended up doing a lot of awful things a few years ago, she actually did something really good on her Roseanne show over 20 years ago. She had a lesbian character who was a jerk. You were free to hate the character. And it was like, and like in some ways it seemed like, how is that a good thing? But again, in every other show, they made them the most boring, vanilla is kind of the description of the character. And she made it okay to hate the gay character, because not because the character was gay, but because the character was a jerk. Sandra Bernhard played the role. And in fact, I didn't even realize it while watching. I was reading something that described it, and I thought, how brilliant what she was able to do in that way. So again, we need to see ourselves and know that we're okay. You're okay. Whoever you are.
Thank you so much for allowing me to ask that question this late in the game. I can assure you that we could probably make a whole nother program just on that conversation. We are extremely fortunate here in Prince George's County Memorial Library System that we have intellectual freedom policies that encourage people to consume media and think for themselves, and that we have a library that is a trusted gatekeeper of correct information. So if you want to explore a topic that's about someone like yourself, you can find it at the library. And if you want to explore a topic that gives you a window into somebody else's life because you yourself are not like that, you can find that at the library too. I know that Miss Vivian is in the house. So if anybody else has any questions for the delegate, please do let us know. You can type them into the comments. We have a couple of other questions that we can ask the delegate, but Miss Vivian is our number one fan. So her question for the delegate is, why get into politics?
There's a lot of ways to make an impact on your immediate community, your larger community, our nation, the world. If you care about the environment, you can go do things related to the environment. To get into politics is an opportunity, I would say, to help your local community and have an immediate impact. You can, and I think it's important that people find out who represents them, which is why I believe I put that in the chat earlier. It's important to engage people in political issues. I can't know about what's happening in your immediate community unless you call me and say, hey, this is happening. There's this, something's happening at our school. This roadway that has no sidewalks is a dangerous place to walk. This policy is happening. Hey, there's bullying happening in the school. So not everyone is interested in politics, but it's a great avenue to have an impact and improve things. It's not for everyone, certainly, but there's so many other ways to be involved and help your community. So I'm kind of adding in a few things here, but also I think it's so important that people educate themselves about the issues. So since this is with Prince George's libraries, there's a lot of municipalities, towns in Prince George's County. So maybe the city you live in is incorporated, as they say. And so you have a mayor and a town council, but you also have your Prince George's executive and you have the council members, and they deal with Prince George's specific issues. And then you have the people from Prince George's who represent you in the state legislature. So there's a lot of value in elevating your voice in politics.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get noticed, get documented, speak up, be heard. And that's actually a great segue to some of our final questions that we have for the delegate, which are for our teenage viewers who might be interested in civic engagement or politics themselves. What things would you want? I know that you represent Montgomery County and live there, but what important things do you want Prince George's County teens to know about the needs of and life in the DMV region?
I put some notes here that I have in front of me, and part of what I'm answering maybe isn't about the DMV in general, which the District, Maryland, and Virginia, but also just more broadly the things that I think you should all know. So I'm taking a little break here, Rebecca, if that's okay. One
Please
thing
do.
I want to let you all know is that no solutions are easy, and sometimes politicians will try to sell you on easy answers, or other people will say, boy, all those politicians are so dumb. How can't they figure it out? Nothing is easy. If the problems were easy to fix, we would have done it decades ago. So be very wary of people who tell you that things are easy. The solutions are easy. Also, I want people to stay idealistic. When I was your age, my father said, and he did a lot of good things, but he also said that I would lose my idealism when I got older. And I want to say, don't let anyone take that from you. And I didn't let him take it from me. Always believe that you can change the world. What I discovered as I became an adult and I got involved in politics, what he might have been trying to tell me was, you're not going to change the world overnight. You're not going to change minds overnight. All these things won't necessarily happen in your lifetime. Well, that's the pragmatism that I've learned, the realism. So I get that I might just be able to, for a sports reference, move the ball just a few feet down the field, but that's better than where we were before. So I haven't ever lost the dream that we can make our society more open, more free, and for everyone. I've just come to realize it's probably not going to happen in my lifetime or even my 2.5-year-old daughter's lifetime. But don't lose the goals. I do want to say to you, those of you who feel excluded by your family or the fear of exclusion, that I guess I should not be absolute, but the world gets better, and it does get better as an adult. And you can find that space where people will love you for who you are, and friends who will accept you for who you are. And I'm sorry if the situation isn't good right now, but it will get better. And I guess the other just advice in general, important thing to do is just trying to stay knowledgeable, reading the paper, trying to listen to people maybe on different sides of issues, just being open to information. So that's not exactly the question you had, Rebecca, but and I don't mean to be I hate when politicians are asked questions like, what would you do to solve this problem? And they talk about something else. But in this case, I just, those are the messages I want to get out to young people. So
I think that's great.
That one around.
No, thank you so much for that, because some of our viewers might not actually be here in Prince George's County or Maryland or even in the United States. We have viewers from all over the world, and I think these are certainly great things to know wherever that you live, loving yourself and seeking for a better life for yourself and others. I think everyone can resonate with. I do want to ask if there are any teens out there watching who want to get involved in politics. What do you recommend as good first steps?
In a lot of cases, it's the kinds of things I did when I got home from college, but I think it's something they can do now. Finding out who represents you in your city, your county, or the state legislature, even in federally, the people who represent you in the United States Congress. You can help on campaigns. You can, as high school students, in fact, I think it's just for seniors, where they can be what's called a page in the Maryland legislature, where you spend a week in Annapolis in our state house. I'm not sure with the still under the pandemic whether the students are coming back. I think they were last year, and they didn't help the way they used to, but they still learned together about the legislature, and they still had this week where they were away from school. But that's an opportunity. Most people don't have high school interns, but after high school, for any of you, hopefully many of you going off to college, and hope you have those opportunities. And starting in a community college is often a great way to make it more affordable. And I recommend that you have a great community college in Prince George's County. But that you can also have internships in the Maryland General Assembly. You can also intern maybe with a county council member in your county. So those are ways to get involved. And just look for if the issues that you care about. If it's about LGBTQ plus issues, if it's environmental issues, if it's educational issues, there's groups out there that are advocating on those issues, and you can get involved with them and learn from them. And then about first steps, it's really just, it's like about finding the organizations in your community. And I guess, I don't know, it was maybe a little harder for me back in the day. There wasn't the internet to use to find it, but now you could probably find those resources. Of course, ask your friendly librarian to help you find maybe where are the groups within the county that are dealing with an issue that you care about.
That's fabulous advice. Thank you very much for that. I hope everybody takes that to heart. Lots of great opportunities and internships. The sooner the better, because you are a whole complete person right now with lots to give. So an internship is a great opportunity to get back to your community and learn and get experience, which is very valuable when you're looking for jobs. Also, at the bottom of the screen, you will see a link to Gail's opposing viewpoints. Delegate Kaiser was pointing out about it's really important to look at both sides or multiple sides of an issue and understand what issues are very important that are hot topics right now. And if you have a library card, which I'm sure you do, because if you're a Prince George's County public school student, you have your link account, you can go and use opposing viewpoints, not just for projects, but also to just find out a little bit more about issues that are important to society today. While we have just a few more moments, if we have any more questions for Delegate Kaiser, please do let us know. Are there any things that teens can actively do to support their own districts besides getting directly involved?
I think educating themselves and others about the issues that are happening. There's ways to find out what we're debating in Annapolis or what's being debated in Upper Marlboro, which is your county seat in Prince George's, and finding out what those issues are. And just you can knock on doors and try to convince your neighbors that they should care about the road project at the end of the street or something with the environment or some other issue. And so there's ways to do that without like physically going to Annapolis or going to Upper Marlboro, but there's other ways to help in the community.
That's great. Yeah, because sometimes not everybody has their own ride, and an Uber to Annapolis could be a little expensive. So It's really great to know that there are lots of opportunities for teens to make a difference right here in Prince George's County, right in their own towns and even their own neighborhoods. I just want to say thank you so much to you, Delegate Kaiser. I know what an incredibly demanding schedule you have, on top of being a wife and mother and a legislature and a professor and. So we so very much appreciate your time and that you were willing to come here and share your wonderful viewpoints and your wealth of expertise with our queer teens and their allies. Thank you, everybody, for watching the program today. The program is Up and Out, and we do a monthly spotlight. If anybody else has any questions for Delegate Kaiser that you didn't want to ask right now or couldn't, you can email Delegate Kaiser at anne.kaiser@house.state.md.us, and that is being shown at the bottom of the screen right now. Until next time, everybody, wishing you a very safe and peaceful holiday season. We will be back in 2022, continuing our conversations. If you look at the bottom of the screen, we have some great events going on, coat drive, and even the finals for the Youth Poet Laureate of the county coming up very soon.
Nice.
So please do check us out. And until then, we'll see you at the library.
Bye.